Your mind. healthcare, food, living spaces, transportation, cities, enterprises, energy, and digital trust. We believe technology is forging a brighter future.
Ibu Dian, CEO of Excel and co-chair of the W20, G20. Candice Johnson and the members of the Global Telecoms Women's Network for joining us. Distinguished speakers and guests, welcome to the Network of the Universe session of the APAC M360. I opened the stage this morning by referring to our conclusion at the GSMA that we are now in an era where our prejudice and concepts of what is a nation are being disrupted. And I think we've moved beyond the digital transformation of our lives, our work and our place and commerce and society. And now the construct of our nations, how we identify and associate ourselves, our affinity with the other people is being disrupted. The world has woken up from effectively a relatively steady state of growth for a number of years. And now we find ourselves with accelerating technology cycles, COVID that just won't seem to go away, political diversity and speculation to the extent of the economic downturn we're about to have. Debate is turning to who are our leaders, who will articulate the vision for an inclusive and sustainable future, and who will inspire us and guide us on the journey ahead. So it gives me great honour to open this session because we're joined today by speakers from around the globe who have come to share their vision for a network of the universe and are all champions of industry in their own right. Most of our speakers also feature in other parts of the agenda over the 2 days, but we have an opportunity here for a more intimate discussion and vision for future digital nations. So it's fair to ask what the future will be, what do we need to do better, and how can we create change in communities to be more resilient and empowering for all. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank our sponsors, the Global Telecoms Women's Network and Pacific. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress, but working with Candice and the members of the Global Telecom Women's Network is about commitment and enduring energy. So I look forward to continuing our collaboration in the future. But now it's time for me to turn the microphone over to Icon of Indonesia's mobile industry. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ibu Dian for more than 10 years now, around 14 years, working together in Indonesia, and she is certainly an enduring leader. Ibu Dian is not only the CEO of XL Axiata, but this year is co-chair of the W20 as part of Indonesia's presidency of the G20 this year. And I'd like to thank her for making the time to join us today here in Singapore. And welcome to the stage, Ibu Dian.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Is it sound okay? So good afternoon, everyone. Very glad to be here. Glad to see you in this room. Some ladies, strong ladies and men also. So today I'll be talking about what we are doing in W20 and also what is the importance of our world, which is digital world, connectivity as infrastructure for women empowerment. So first, I would like to do some introduction of W20. So W20 is actually an engagement group in G20, that's focusing in on gender equality and women empowerment. Yeah. So this year, Indonesia has been selected as a presidency for G20, and this is a very an honor position, a privilege for us because it will only happen every 20 years. So, by the time the next presidency, I don't know where we will be at that time. Yeah. So W20 Indonesia and G20 have actually very strong commitment in putting this women empowerment issue into the gender equality of the G20. W20 doesn't work alone, so it works with all stakeholders in ensuring that the women's empowerment and gender issue becoming the center of discussion in all the G20 leaders, and actually putting in their leader declaration that will be later incorporated into the policies, regulations, whatever these leaders needs to do. Yeah. So our primary missions is to influence high-level commitment on women's empowerment into G20 agenda. Yeah. So especially after COVID, right? So G20 presidency Indonesia has the theme of recover stronger, recover together. And W20 is putting to that. So it's not only recover stronger together, but recover equally. So no one left behind, yeah, especially women. So if you're talking about this women empowerment, so why do we need women empowerment? I think enough assessment, enough study that's showing that, there is a very strong business case, right, for doing or for advocating women empowerment. Yeah, there are many assessment, be it by McKinsey or GSMA or Bloomberg or World Bank, that actually if we are advancing women's equality, the GDP increase is significant. Yeah, the trajectory for economic growth is also significant. Yeah, so if we take example here for ACS potential, 4.5 trillion GDP increase in 2025 if we increase women's equality. And Bloomberg said that global economic growth will be able to get additional 20 trillion if women are educated at the same level as men. So it's clear, if we're talking about women empowerment, if we're talking about women inclusion, it's not an emotional discussion. It's a business case discussion, yeah, because there is a kind of economic value to it. Yeah, so it's not only about, okay, we need to give more respect for women or whatever. This is an economic discussion. However, there are many attempts, there are many actions, and that business case has been actually understood by not only by our leaders, country leaders, but all the stakeholders. However, there are persistent issues on this. And actually, I just said in the previous session that this issue about gender gap has been there for centuries, for ages, right? And why it's still there? Yeah, after all, whatever we are doing, the problem still persists. And not only persists, but what has happened with COVID, actually it has wiped out the result that we have done for the last decade because of COVID. Because COVID has given a higher impact to women compared to men. Yeah, it's because women have to be like caregiver during COVID, and the agenda for women health has been actually parked because of COVID and so on and so forth. So that's why in W20 we actually W20 Indonesia pick 5 priorities issues that we have to address. Yeah, that has been persisting all these years. First is about discrimination and non-equality. So we have to promote equality, safety. So in terms of policies, yeah, that impairs women participation. As I said, that why this women empowerment or this gender gap exists is because it is very complex. Yeah, it is it is not only about social issues, but it's also cultural, it's political, and so on and so forth. So the thing that we have to do in terms of addressing this, it has to start with policy. Policy that will remove all the discriminatory situation for women. Second is on the economic inclusion. On the economic inclusion, if we're talking about economic inclusion, it's actually about labor participation, women participation in the labor market, and also in the entrepreneurship. So this year, we decided to choose MSMEs because by actually empowering women to have their small businesses, yeah, will give economic rebound faster. And we see actually during COVID, I don't know in other countries, but in Indonesia, it is proven that MSMEs has been like a strong pillar for our economy to sustain during COVID. Yeah, and Indonesia, there are more than 54% of SMEs actually owned by women. So we want to support them further and making them not only sustain but go digital and also go global. Yeah, the third one, this health issues is really, I mean, surging during COVID, right? So we want that the government provide affordable access for healthcare for women and girls, and also especially to address women's issues. Yeah, there are one thing that coming up during this COVID is about vaccines, for instance. So vaccines was trialed mostly in men. So the impact for women are not known. Yeah, what is the impact of this for women is actually less compared to men. And then rural women. So if we talk about marginalized group, rural women and women with disabilities, any disparity is actually impacting them worse. Yeah, for instance, like COVID or any natural disaster. The impact to them will be much deeper compared to us. For instance, that's why Indonesian presidency take this as priority issues. Yeah. So, for instance, for digital gap, if we're talking about big cities, maybe like Indonesia, because we have like many islands. In Jakarta, is almost the same. But if we going to outside Jakarta or outside Java, this digital gap is actually very significant. Yeah. So we have to put focus on this marginalized and vulnerable segment. So now we're talking about what is the importance of connectivity as infrastructure for women empowerment. We believe that digital will actually empower and accelerate social development and economic development for women. So we see that gender gap of digital transformation is actually still there. The good news that is closing. Yeah, the good news is closing. So if we compare now 2020 to 10 years back, actually it's closing. It's hovering around 10 to 15%. Yeah. So for instance, like in men, the internet user is 67%, but women is only 56%. Yeah. So we see that 38% women in the world are using internet, and 300 million more men access internet compared to women. So the gender gap in digital arena is still there. I think this is something that mobile network operator and all stakeholders in digital industry, including GSMA, has to address. And for this, we need to work together. Yeah, I think everybody would agree with that. So as an output, actually W20 produce recommendations to the leaders. And our recommendation based on the priorities issue, all of them is actually has digital connectivity to it. Yeah, because as I mentioned, digital connectivity plays a big role in addressing the priority issues in gender gap. So for instance, the first one, for non-discriminatory discrimination and equality, we actually demand for leaders to provide opportunity and access to digital forum at all levels of employment, politics, education, and research. And also, we recommend that government ensuring that digital technology like AI does not create, perpetuate, and amplify all biases in data in algorithms. We know now is in AI why it is skewed probably to men is because the data points that are used is actually biased towards men. So we recommend that has to be addressed. And then for for the economic inclusion on MSMEs, we also recommend the leaders to scale up women MSMEs through digital transformation and financial inclusion. And we need to provide them with opportunities and incentives to participate in emerging opportunities. So it's not only for like a basic business model or types like F&Bs or crafting or something like that, but I think we need to also open opportunities for them for digital innovation, AI, green and blue technologies, and also in the STEM arena. Yeah, because our participation in STEM is actually quite low. Yeah, progress a bit, but very slow. So the percentage point within 10 years is only 5 points. Gender equitable health response. So we recommend that digitization of women's health related service is to be improved, including required investment in additional medical research and technology focused on women and girls in all diversity. Yeah, so this is to also catch up because during COVID, most of this agenda was actually parked or left behind. Rural women, access to digital technology is very important because currently not only digital infrastructure, but any infrastructure, you name it, yeah, in rural actually left behind compared to, of course, compared to the major cities. On women disabilities, one of the recommendations is also policy adoption on implementation of digital technology for women with disabilities, and also putting investment on training them with certain technology that will help them doing their daily life or also participating in the labor market. So one of the recommendations that we put there for women or people with disabilities is for the government to put policy for minimum requirement for corporation to employ people with disabilities. So, and then what is our roles as MNOs or telco operator in this women empowerment? First is actually I'm taking example as my company because we also telco operator in Indonesia. So we put this women empowerment as part of our ESG initiative. Yeah. So our mission is to accelerate digital transformation that is inclusive, empowering, and also sustainable. Yeah, inclusive it has to be available for everyone. And as I said, also we think that currently is this digital transformation or digital transformation is already spreading in light speed, but it's not the same for everyone. Second is empowering. Yeah, so digital transformation has to be able to improve people's life, including women. Yeah, so what we need to focus on there is if we help women in using internet is also not only for social media, for instance, it's not only for getting information, but how to use internet to help them creating more income for their family. So then they will be able to have like sort of leverage or power, yeah? Because if we see the data in terms of the violence, gender violence is actually still very high, yeah? I think what we need to address is what is the source of it. The source of it is the economic power. If women has economic power, then those things about gender violence, I'm sure that will be actually reduced or diminished. And then digital transformation has to be aligned with effort to achieve SDGs. Yeah, one thing that we have done or we are doing in terms of digital literacy is since 2015 we launched a movement called SisterNet. So this movement is actually a movement from women to other women, yeah, from a sister to other sister. That's why it's called SisterNet. The reason why we pick this platform as something for women to other women is because we see for women to learn about internet is easier if they hear it from other women, yeah, because usually in the family their husband probably doesn't have time to teach them, and their kids is not patient enough to teach the mother, and so on and so forth. So we create these women. So we gather women all over Indonesia that are willing to teach another women for internet, yeah, and that's to address the digital gap. So, and we actually elevate that movement not only for introducing them to internet, but then we create the program called Sispreneur. So this Sispreneur is to one step ahead. So after they know internet, so we give them incubation, we give them training. So this is Sispreneur. So this is a business incubation for them. So we give them online and offline classes for business incubation. It depends on what their interest. So if it is about food and beverage, so we connect them with the subject matter expert on that. If they like to do like crafting, we also connect them with the subject matter expert. And we do mentoring session, not only with the local expert, but also expert internally. And we also provide them with the showcase, because if they don't have like a place for showcasing their product and introducing their product, it might not actually increase their business. And then in terms of business, also we have like this matchmaking platform. So for these women that wants to have MSMEs, and also women who already has MSMEs who wants to grow their business, to meet angel investors. And we also work with other sponsors, with banks, to provide business funding for them. Yeah, I think the key with this kind of program is that this has to address the whole ecosystem. So for instance, like we just cannot just give them a class, incubation class or a training class. Yeah, we should also see the whole ecosystem, the funding they need. yeah, the relation to the ecosystem, to the networking, how to reach how to enter the supply chain of corporation, how to enter the for instance standards by private sector or also by government and so on and so forth. So the key is addressing their problem in their ecosystem, not only one part of that ecosystem, and it has to be continuous, because what I see is that I'm not saying that one of you are doing that. What I see is some companies is do it like ad hoc, yeah, ad hoc thing. That I mean the impact will be actually big if we do it continuously, and also we do it partnering with others. By doing this, is actually in doing this, we also partner with other companies, with also with women empowerment minister, and also with other ministry as well, to create a higher impact. Okay, so actually that's end my speech. So I think we need to do it to recover together equally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. I mean, that was so inspiring for us. I mean, we've seen some of the things that you're doing, but you're a living example, you know, the CEO of one of the biggest telcos. And anyway, now what we're going to do is somebody saying, look, I came here for something to know about the network of the universe. Now, what is that? Well, you're going to find out soon. And this network of the universe is actually going to be described to you by women. So all the women who you're going to hear from today are building the network of the universe. So, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce two videos, and that is from Susan Brazer, CEO and founder of Lionshare Media, and Lynette Tan, CEO of Singapore Space and Technology Limited. Unfortunately, Lynette couldn't be here, she's in the US. But anyway, this will set the scene and it will get your mind going. And be ready for the panel, okay? Over to the video.
Hi, I'm Susan Brazer, CEO and founder of Lionshare Media. I'm delighted to join you via video from Los Angeles, California, and would have loved to join you in Singapore to discuss the network for the universe. I'm particularly excited that this vision for the future is being led by a global panel of women, all of whom are seasoned executives and innovators in the tech, media, telecom, and space industries. The network for the universe is one of the most significant moonshots of our lifetime. It's an even more expansive vision than the metaverse. Most people imagine the metaverse as a virtual world that will appear out of thin air. I agree with this, as Lionshare Media is building the thin air metaverse as a service platform to deliver next-generation entertainment, immersive media, and frictionless commerce. Thin Air enables a collective reality experience that connects the physical, digital, and virtual worlds, including real people, places, and things. The network of the future goes far beyond all this to connect us in infinite space. How amazing is that? A key challenge for building the network for the universe will be to coordinate the countless new technologies, decentralized development teams, parallel roadmaps, stakeholder interests, and financial resources. It will require new digital tools, business rules, and workflows that are more intelligent, collaborative, automated, transparent, trusted, tokenized, and incentivized. The Web3 movement that's currently underway is laying a solid foundation for this new way of working. The network of the universe gives me a totally fresh perspective. While many have expressed that thin air is a big idea, I now see it as a critical starting point that can evolve and contribute to the network for the universe. I'm excited to join this epic adventure and be there with you all.
Hi, good morning to all of you. It is 5 a.m. where I am. I'm sorry I can't join you in person, but with some luck, I might just be in time for a cocktail with all of you, which is an important part of the Mobile 360 Asia Pacific Conference. Thank you to Candice, founding president, Global Telecom Women's Network, for extending this invitation to me. It is a tough one to follow after Suzanne, but I'll do my best. I think it is amazing that you've put together a group of women, Anna, Shweta, Sheena, Rosalia, who are coming together to share their insights of their work and how we could, as female leaders, shape the network of the future. For women who are given this opportunity to have their voices heard and given this opportunity to share their thoughts and views, we have to know that it is also important that we look for opportunities even within the groups of women, and that we are sensitive that perhaps other women might need a different pathway to be put into positions where they can also shine and do good work. To the men who are co-piloting this journey of shaping the network of the future with us, thank you for your strong support. I also urge you to look within your group of men, to look for diversity and different strength within that group, to be able to allow grow different talent and different capabilities to have their voices heard as well. Together, this industry requires the best talent and the best minds to create products and services that allow people to communicate with people, to allow connectivity and communications that can save lives. In short, providing a service that can benefit people, that can benefit companies, that can benefit societies, and that can advance civilization. And we need to do this together to shape the future of the network industry. I wish all of you a very fruitful event, and I hope to see some of you later this evening. Thank you.
Put up now, and so can you bear with us while we do this? So can I get our ladies up on stage, please? Now this is a little bit of when we were working this out, we were talking about how do we manage this, because we knew we had a bit of a constraint with the size of the stage and the size of the panel. And so I said, oh, well, look, we're women. We can solve problems. So, you know, we will do something. We will solve it. We thought we might have to have a rotating panel, but thanks to Christina at the back there, who's brought all this together, we've managed to squeeze us all on here. And I see that we've got different chairs. I don't think any of the chairs mean anything, so we'll just get up there. So I think if we can sit one end, because my co-moderator here. So, we say, oh, sorry, this is the thing. There is a reason for the silver seats. It's because we're the moderators, Vicky. Yeah. Right, okay. So I'm not going to go into introducing everyone at the beginning, but I just wanted to say a little bit about when we started. We had our panel discussion actually last week. To be quite frank, we had a fantastic discussion, and we were deciding this was really a bit of the logistics. How do we manage this panel when we all can't fit on the stage? And then we said, well, what are the two building blocks of the network of the universe? Connectivity and content. And we thought, oh, that's interesting. We've got content people and we've got connectivity people. And then we said, what comes first, connectivity or content? And then Jaya said,
the meat. So you heard me say that in the panel this morning.
Yes, sorry.
Was introduced to this Canadian philosopher, a communication specialist called Marshall. And he was absolutely amazing. And he said, the medium is the message. Right? And what he actually meant was that when humans create tools, we shape tools, and then the tools shape us. And if you ask my daughters, the mobile phone and the connectivity and the social media apps are definitely shaping them. But they are content creators themselves. And so they have managed to shape that medium through their own creativity. So as Marshall McLuhan says, the medium is the message.
So it's still true then,
Yes.
all those years. Okay, so this is, we're throwing things in, not doing it exactly to how we said we're going to do it because, we're women, we can work, we can do all of it. Multitask. So if we look at in Asia Pacific, mobile networks are really the main way of connecting. And actually, we've not done a bad job, really, in terms of coverage. And we've collaborated. We've collaborated with the satellite industry now. It's not just mobile, we're connecting everyone. So we've got a very small, what I would call coverage gap, but a very important coverage gap that we need to still address. But what is really amazingly difficult, and Ibu mentioned it in a way, is the fact that actually, although people have access or are near a mobile network, they still don't use it. Only 44% of the population are actually using internet. So we've got a problem there. So we need to address both the coverage and the content. So how do we do this in the network of the future? So do we talk about content first, or do we talk about networks? Connectivity, chicken or egg? Well, we decided we'd go with network first, because I'm a network person. So with that, I'm going to just add one question, and then my moderator, in fact, the chief questioner is Vicky here, who is the Secretary General of Global Telecoms Women Network, will ask most of the questions, so you won't get many questions from me. So the two, oh, actually, this is interesting. We're not together. So we've got network at one end and network at this end. So Candice Johnson, who is the founder of Global Telecoms Women Network, and she's got so much more on her list. And I wrote it down here, but I can't read it all now. But she's been an agent of change. She's an inspiration to every woman who knows her. I've had the pleasure of knowing her just for over a year, and she is really, well, she's brought this team together. Okay, then Jaya, who is strategy...
EVP for Strategy and Transformation at Colt.
At Colt. Also, you're going to hear some amazing things from both of these. So I'll start off with the first question, and I'll hand over... And then, then we'll do the content, and then we'll let Vicky have a go, yes. So, Candice, this creation of the network of the universe, can you give us you have to be concise. What is the network of the universe? Can you tell these people in here who's thinking, well, I'm not sure what difference it is to what we have today?
So for me, it's networks. For the universe. Right. For the universe. And basically, I am a space person. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm also a musician. And so people would say, how can you combine the two? And basically, I always tell everyone, whether you're performing as a soprano or whether you're creating a network, you must keep the message intact. It must be communicated purely. And so this morning I mentioned that I went from using satellites to provide access, universal access, and today I'm using satellites to provide access to the universe. And so what I am seeing now is that with the James Webb Telescope, with the fact that we can now look at the Big Bang, we can look at the origins of humanity, we can thus combine deep space with near space and with the planet. All of us who are in space, it is not about creating data centers on the moon, to do it for the moon. It is not about using microgravity to help with pharmaceutical or with agricultural development. It is always about what we are doing for Mothership Earth. How can we make Mothership Earth and humanity be combined?
Okay, thank you. Candice, that was very concise for you, I have to say. Now, I can be that cheeky because I think we've got this
sure.
going together. So, Jai, I'm just going to ask you a question. And
Yep.
now you're responsible for digital transformation, effectively, at Colt.
Yep.
And when we were talking, you were talking about the impacts of quantum computing, networking. How do you think that's going to have an impact on the network of the universe? And what role will that play? Can you share some
Of course, thank you.
insights on that?
This might sound a bit whacked out, but the topic says, the networks of the universe. So I have let my imagination go wild, but it is rooted in some reality. So to set the context of both quantum networking and quantum computing, what's important to know is that we are communicating intergalactically today. Right? So you'll say, what do you mean? So Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 is still sending data back, and it's using old technology. I mean, it's 45-year-old technology. It's still radio waves. Of course, the antennas that we're using to get the data back from them has to be pointed precisely, and really it's a choreographed dance between those huge antennas and the huge antennas on Voyager. So we are getting data back from outer space or outside our solar system today. And then, James Webb, which is at 1 million miles away, we are getting data back, lots of data back there. So there is technology that exists today, which is based on our old radio waves. And it's robust. It's robust and it's working really well. But the future seems to be aligned to quantum computers. And then if you, like normal computers, if you connect up, quantum computers, what you get is a quantum network. And that's simply, the thing that I'm passionate about is the hive mind. And I'm saying that this is hive mind 2.0. So if you have quantum computers and they are connected by a quantum network, right? So we are moving now qubits around, and you can use fiber to move these qubits around.
Satellites are better.
So of course, not just satellites, in the whole ecosystem, right?
Yes, but for quantum
Absolutely.
computing, they are.
Absolutely. So whether we talk, this morning we heard about HAPS, so this high altitude platform systems, and if you, so terrestrial high altitude platform systems, if you look at LEO, MEO, GEO, and whatever is happening with Voyager, I don't know the term for it, but maybe deep space, right? That entire thing can collapse and become really, really speedy with quantum networking and quantum computers. And today, these are in the realms of the academia, but they're always future first. So in brief, that when Colt thinks about what it's trying to do, it keeps this perspective in mind. So no, we are not developing new communication methods for spaceships, but do we aspire to be there? Do we think about it? Absolutely.
Thank you, Jai. So I'd like to now just flip it over to our content queens. Okay? I shouldn't have said queens really, but our content ladies. And, what we've seen since we've had the smartphone, data usage has absolutely shot up. And that data usage has been on all sorts of different things. We've heard about it, is it TikTok or is it meaningful activities? And what we're seeing now is that with Web 3.0, that is coming along, maybe not quite here yet, but it's on the way. And there, in some countries like Korea, in China, we heard today, there's already, the metaverse is already available. So this is going to create loads and lots of new investment in networks and things like that. So we need to make sure that in these new networks, that the content is, how do we make sure that the content is usable? What are the issues that we're going to find around with having this new metaverse there? So it's a bit of a broad question there, and it covers a lot of topics. So could it be about what is the value of the content? What is the issues around sustainability? Is it going to, with 5G, we're going to get massive amount of data? Is that going to drive up our planet, the cost of the consumption of electricity? And what are the other IPR issues and technology issues? So I'm going to hand over to Rosalia. Rosalia is CEO of Bixi, which is a fintech for women. And you can say a little bit more about it if you want first, please do.
Thank you. That was not a softball. So I'm here to address all of the content challenges for the entire universe. You know, when I first saw the name of this panel, I thought, wow, this is, firstly, thank you so much for the invitation to speak on this panel. It's almost unfathomable to think that we're actually having a realistic discussion about communication for the entirety of the universe. But we see now, you know, to your point, this is within the realm of possibilities, and I'm so glad that we're included, particularly as a panel of women, at this stage, because I think so often, you know, with the creation of you know, expanding throughout the planet, with the creation of expanding throughout the internet, we were left out of a lot of those discussions, and we're dealing with the repercussions of that now. And so it's, you know, this is a really key first step to be part of this discussions at the inception of ideas, rather than waiting till, oh, we're already, you know, living on Mars, and oh, did we forget 50% of the population? So that's really great. But you know, that was my first thought. Just gratitude for being on this panel. My second thought was, you know, if you were an alien from the outer realms of the universe, and you arrived in Earth right now, and you looked at our data centers, what would you think about our society, right? Like the same way that we excavate to learn about our ancestors. You'd think we were obsessed with cat videos, you know, like a lot. You would think that that was a really big part of our days. And so I thought, that's kind of it's not the greatest legacy to leave behind, and it's, you know, quite an ecological footprint for the purposes of watching cat videos on repeat. No offense to cats, of course. So I'm really, part of what we're doing at Bixie is, you know, we're trying to provide content that's useful, that's transformative in the lives of women, because, you know, as I mentioned on an earlier panel, fewer than 1% of us invest, and that's really to our own detriment, especially as we live in a capitalist system where currently capital makes more money than labor, right? It's kind of in the name. So it's really important that, you know, part of our aspirations for equity really lie in at least being, you know, on par from an economic standpoint. So much of what we do is about providing financial literacy. So I'm hoping, you know, when the Martians do arrive and they see, okay, we at least dedicated 5% of our times to learning about finance, they won't judge us too harshly. But that being said, you know, as a fintech, obviously a fintech for the future, we're building on Web3. We are, you know, we have our own cryptocurrency. We're part of the Web3 domain. And with that comes a lot of responsibility about the planet. You know, in our pre-panel, how this issue of sustainability came up was because, you know, we are using so much of our data service centers, and it's particularly, you know, for millennials and Gen Z, it's really hard to talk about, oh, we're going to expand into the universe and colonize all these planets and move there, when a lot of us feel like we have a really, really great planet where I can live more or less without an oxygen mask, at least, for the moment. And I want to make sure that I can continue to live here, and that my daughter, who's 9 months old, can also continue to live here, so that nothing that we're doing to, you know, forge into the future is going to prevent a future for myself and for next generations. So I think, sorry.
Yeah, no.
So from that content point of view, I think that the issue that I want to underline is just, you know, as much as we love entertainment, and as much as we love cat videos, and as much as I personally love watching YouTube videos, you know, on my days of turning my brain off, I think we have to really think about being responsible about that type of consumption. You know, we are responsibilizing ourselves across the chain of our consumption, you know, from our clothes to our food. And I think we really seriously need to have that conversation right now when it comes to consumption of our content. So I think part of future-proofing, you know, our expansion into the universe is responsibilizing ourselves with the consumption of our data and how we spend our time. So I almost, you know, part of the issues I want to address with this panel is like, what are we doing collectively, and everybody in this room, to, I know none of us want to, you know, make content boring and everything to be a learning experience, but how can we at least create some kind of social benefit with the content that we're creating? Not only for our planet, but also so those future aliens who arrive on our planet will think that we had a worthwhile experience here.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosalia. Now, Shweta is Head of Business Development and Media at AWS and has a wealth of experience in the media business in India with NDTV. Yes. Now, Shweta, what do you think, what are you doing at AWS for this content and thinking about the network of the universe? What would you like to what do you think you're contributing as in this content area?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, again, thanks so much for inviting me, and thank you, Candice, especially to you. So I would say, first of all, I would like to, clarify I'm not a content person. I help content providers, content creators leverage the cloud technology, and in a way that's more resilient and also, sustainable, right? To your point, and we'll get to that in a bit. But really, my job is to work with any company who's in the business of entertainment. So that's broadcasters, content studios, telecom operators. We work with the XL, Axiata as well, pay TV operators around the region in Asia Pacific on how they can leverage all the innovation that's happening in the cloud technologies, and how they can, diversify their revenue streams, how they can delight their customers. Really, that's the end goal. And, like you mentioned about going through a lot of videos and flipping through and getting entertained, how can we do this at scale and without harming our planet? So that's part of my job. I work on a lot of transformation initiatives. And also, I want to address maybe one of the points that you mentioned earlier, which is the metaverse. It's still in a very, I would say, formative stage at the moment. And just like what we experienced in early 2000s, which also kind of reveals my age, when I started working, it was like we used to wonder, what can the internet become? What can the e-commerce become, right? It was so early. And it's, I think, the similar stage for metaverse. We have so many of our customers, media companies, telecom operators who are doing experiments, running pilots, and seeing, what kind of acceptance is there. And to your point, that the amount of data that gets generated, and also the transfer of data that happens, to generate these type of immersive experiences which are interactive in nature. And if you think about it, metaverse is really, we're trying to combine the physical and the digital world and create a unique experience for every individual, hundreds of millions of users, right? So it is a very real-time live experience that requires a whole lot of compute power, and we're talking about like graphics compute infrastructure here. So very high-end compute, very high-end storage. In fact, one of our partners, Unreal Engine, they're working on this meta-human project where I, as an individual and every user, we can walk into a shopping mall or into a music concert or into a sports stadium, and really, we have our own individual avatar, the digital avatar, that not just looks like us, but also has exactly the same facial expressions and actions as we are moving. So all that kind of, the interactivity and the immersive experience that we're trying to achieve requires huge compute and huge storage. So as cloud providers, I think our job is to make sure that we provide that kind of capabilities to platforms in a way that's sustainable and that's also scalable, to be able to delight the end customer.
Thank you so much, Shweta. And sort of leading on to that, and it'll be my last question. I'm going to hand over to a much more experienced moderator than myself. Sheena is partner and head of intellectual property, technology, media and competition. I'm reading it off there. CMS Holborn Limited. I suppose I could have looked down there, but I'm obviously needed to hone up my skills on on presenting live. We were talking about that before because we're also used to presenting on a digital where you had it all in front of you. Now we find we have no prompts in front of us. It's getting a little bit more difficult. So Sheena, we talked a little bit before about metaverse and with your role in sort of making protection and with some of the dangers and risks, and also this metaverse thing. What do we need any protections? What are the legal or policy things that we need to think about from your perspective? Just a few words on that would be be really helpful. And then we'll open it up to a more interactive discussion.
Sure. So thank you for that question and for inviting an attorney to be on a panel, which is usually not always a good idea. But I promise that, what I'm really excited about in terms of the metaverse is, we look at the opportunities. We could actually be here on this panel virtually. I could be a hologram, sort of interacting with you. You'd all be wearing sort of AR headsets. You might not even need to be here. So I think that we do have all these wonderful experiences and opportunities in front of us in terms of the metaverse. But I think there's, as with everything, there's sort of the other issues around regulation. And if those of you who have been sort of reading, in fact, today, the Ministry of Home Affairs in Singapore just put out a paper, a press release talking about how it is looking into harassment and other crimes that are committed online in the metaverse. Yeah. And we've already seen that. So we've seen not only women, men as well, but I would say more women sort of being harassed. Your online avatar gets harassed by other avatars. I mean, who thought that you would have to deal with this sort of thing on the metaverse? But it's real. It's happened already. And I think regulation is therefore something that is necessary. But I would like to say to those, I guess, companies, tech companies, and other media companies who are involved in creating their versions of the metaverse or their piece of the metaverse, to think about these issues when you are creating them, developing them. Consider so that we're not sort of just replicating the same problems we have in real life. Let's think about this. We are, after all, creating a new world. Let's try to develop it in a way that deals with some of these challenges that we have. We don't always want to rely on the law to fix things. I feel that if we try to get the development right, hopefully then regulation can be more light touch. I think that generally is better for everyone. And so that's sort of what I see as really important and critical, because we're here, we're involved, and I think getting more women involved in the development of some of these technologies would probably make the developers more sensitive to some of these issues of harassment, etc. In the metaverse.
And if I may, and I'll just make a few points before turning over to Vicky. In space, the last space law was written in 1967.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, to your point, let us set the principles for the metaverse and for the universe, because we are having huge problems now. We are already out there in space. Yep. And so, and we're playing massive catch up. And the good thing, I think, is that the industry is coming together and that we are trying our very, very hardest. And somebody also mentioned about colonization and, making certain that space is available for all emerging companies. And just two things. One, I think it's very important to remember that the mobile phone, mobile telecommunications, was developed to go to the moon. And so, it is absolutely right that we are discussing networks for the universe at the Mobile 360. And then the second and last thing before turning over to Vicky is that, I'm not a big person for space tourism. It's very bad for the environment and it is wasteful. But all of the experimentation that we can use and what we can learn, the fact that we can put data centers on the moon, that we can do these experimentations in the pharmaceuticals, etc., is very, very important. Every single person who has gone to outer space, the thing that impresses them the most is looking at the beautiful planet Earth, to your point. So Vicky.
I'm going to interrupt just now. I'm not giving you a chance. I just wanted to say something because Diane, what she started us off on that, some of the issues that are here today.
Yeah.
And Sheena mentioned that we have a chance and an opportunity to put something right in a framework for the future. And I think, can we just hold that thought for when we think about what's our call to action? Because one thing that we like to do in here is we don't want to just sit and chit-chat. We want an action out of this. And, that I think is a very important point. But now, Vicky, at long last, you can get your point.
After all that, and you've asked everybody to give their own key points, so I'll try. First of all, I just wanted to explain what is the GTWN. Well, as Candice always likes to say, it's a peer-to-peer network. It's a network of senior women in the tech sector. We started 30 years ago in the telecom sector, but we've expanded to include all areas of digital technology. And what you see in front of you is a physical representation of the GTWN. So people from all areas of the globe, all sectors of technology, not just telecoms, not just media, broadcasting, fintech, and people who believe in technology but not for its own sake, for using technology for the benefit of the world. And I think that's the basis really of the concept of networks for the universe. So we're creating all these networks, building these new networks, but what are we going to use them for? And so I want to take that point up. Everybody's also talked about that already, so stole my thunder. But Jai, if I can go a bit further into this idea of the hive mentality and why is that important as we plan the networks of the future? So how can we make that a practical concept, and what does it mean for people in the tech sector when they're building networks?
So if you look at what the hive mind, right, is something that makes our current capabilities grow exponentially. Right? So that's the principle. Language was the first time that we unlocked thoughts that were within a person and made it into symbols that we could commonly share. So this symposium, this organization, what we're experiencing today is because someone somewhere thought that they could take a noise and give it meaning. Someone had to think about that. So with language, we created the first hive mind. Now today we are creating the next generation, and this is where we are taking thoughts in our language, so human to human communication. But as humans, we've also created tons of objects. Like we know that there are 50 billion or 60 billion objects out there, which talk and communicate. So our microphone, our phones, our refrigerators, our laptops, there are so many devices, and there are devices in factories, the devices at airports, they're countless. They're all talking, so they are communicating through bits and bytes, which is another symbol. Now, in this next generation, it's really important that we take all the intelligence that's within us in our language, and then we take all the intelligence that's happening in the chatter or noise between all of these objects, interlay it on top of each other so that we really unlock potential. Now, imagine, and I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it, Google makes a ton of money from all the communication between search queries. A ton of money. So what if we could institutionalize it for all of us? So if you're going to make women more powerful, or if you're going to look at any group of people that have been marginalized, can you just imagine what could happen if all of that intelligence, for which you need 1,000 data scientists to get all of that information, if it was available naturally, normally? And that's the next generation hive mind, and that will take us into space, right? So someone said it in the panel today. I'm sorry, I know I'm speaking too much. Someone said it, that we've got distributed intelligence, and I said, if you look at all the enterprises, if you look at AWS, if you look at Google, if you look at Microsoft, you look at all the telcos, every tiny little startup, right? That's distributed intelligence. And instead of working for a silo, if we work for the planet, if we work for one common goal, just imagine. And that's what excites me.
And Jaya, because you're going to meet Marshall McLuhan's partner on the 24th when you come to my home. And he went actually one step farther than distributed intelligence, which is collective intelligence.
Absolutely.
So following up from that, you mentioned we shouldn't be working in silos.
Yep.
And ever since the GTWM was created, we've worked across telecoms and media and broadcasting, and back 30 years ago it was a strange new concept to talk about convergence. And so the telcos didn't believe it, they didn't understand broadcasting or media and vice versa. Now we seem to have a different type of silo that's developed. We still have the physical silos, but we have all these different silos in different regions, in different countries where people are disenfranchised or whatever. So it's an enormous issue, and I'd see the networks for the universe as key to unlocking that potential and including people from all these silos. Rosalia, perhaps you've made your life out of trying to meet the needs of the disenfranchised, really, if I can summarize it like that. And in terms of financial disenfranchisement and how that can change the world, what's one specific thing that you would like us to pass on, to our companies and to think about as we go forward?
Yeah, I think what Jai said, share the wealth. That is the underlying, as you mentioned, my career has been including marginalized people, first with the United Nations and then, in fintech. And many people wonder, well, how are those two things connected? Well, at Alipay, I learned you can make a lot of money, but you can also split the investment difference with the end user and lift them up at the same time. I think what you're pointing out, I was so eloquently put, this hive mentality and the sharing, the distribution of this wealth is kind of going to be made and is already made possible with blockchain. It's decentralizing it away from the FANGs, right? And all of us can be a node, and all of us can, earn from being a node in the system. So I really, I think a lot of people, particularly the early adopters of blockchain technology, we were really excited by this technology because of this ability to diffuse the knowledge, i.e. diffuse the power, and really dissipate that wealth. I think, in terms of inclusion, one of the concerns I have right now that everybody, the kind of, what are they called? The early adopters of CryptoPunks, right? It was super marginalized, and then it started to become a bit more mainstream in like 2016. And now, it's really interesting when I go to a blockchain conference. It used to basically be 21-year-olds with like face tattoos. And last week I went to one and everybody has a suit, right? So they've kind of adopted everybody from traditional finance. So I think my concern now is we have this amazing technology that could service so many people, but it's kind of becoming a little co-opted and re-centralized because it's such a threat, because it poses such a threat to centralization. So I think that's how I see inclusion. I think the blockchain is the network of the future and is probably the network of the universe.
Yes.
And I'd like to also talk about the concept that was raised this morning by Salima from the UN, which was universal meaningful connectivity. Because one thing that Jeanette and I spoke about when we were thinking about this panel was, well, we've got connectivity and we've got content, but that we can't separate the two. No. One is totally interspersed with the other. And I like the concept of universal meaningful connectivity, because that, again, is not tech for its own sake, but for a purpose, for the purpose to empowering the user. So how do you, Shweta, how do you see this concept of universal meaningful connectivity, and how does it relate to your experience?
So I think what I would like to put out there, you've been talking about the silos, you've been talking about the new, I would say, literally like creating your own territory and trying to protect that territory, that sort of approach that a lot of organizations are taking. So what we are seeing is increasingly, in fact, a convergence now between telcos and pay TV operators and broadcasters and studios, and now even the creators, content creators, with the whole Web3 concept, how the power is actually coming back to creators as well, right? So the whole economy around creators. So I think as a cloud provider, what I can share is that creating a global infrastructure that is accessible to company of any size, and really to creators as well, to individuals, to companies and organizations of every size or from any industry. And really, I think the word is democratization of technology. You know, making cutting edge technology and putting the power into, you know, every single person's hands is really something that is the vision of a cloud provider who's trying to change the way things have been functioning, you know, that only a handful of companies would have access to the cutting edge technology and all the innovation. Today, anybody can innovate, right? You have your own startup, you have access to exactly the same technology that any big company like Netflix has. You know, so as a content creator, even if I'm just an influencer, maybe I have some my own recipes, I want to go live, you know, I have access to streaming, and I can actually reach out to millions of users. So that is, I think, the crux of it. And as you talk about really creating that universe and making it more inclusive, and really creating technology accessible to everyone is something that I can share. I mean, it's not a very refined version of perhaps what AWS website would say, but yeah, I mean, really that's the vision that we have. And in fact, a very, very big part of that is education, because we know that there is such a dearth of digital skills, especially in this region, Asia Pacific. In fact, in 2020, late 2020, we at AWS, we commissioned a research to see what kind of digital skills are needed in the Asian markets, and what is the gap today. And what we found, one of the very big findings was that by 2025, the requirement for digital workers is going to increase 5-fold. So that's the number of, you know, like tens of millions of people that we need to train in the next, only 3 years left now, you know. So last year when we published the report, in fact, we reached out to a lot of government institutions as well, and, you know, the education institutions and universities, that how can we create training programs, making them accessible in multiple languages. That's where, you know, the Asia Pacific region is very different from many other regions of the world, where we need to make our training programs also and courses available in multiple languages. So the whole point of, I think, the accessibility of technology, accessibility of training of digital skills, that I think is really the larger vision, if I may say, the networks of the universe.
Well, thank you for raising the skills issue, because I did want to talk a bit about what skills we need for this Networks for the Universe. I mean, up till now we've said, oh, we should have more women studying STEM, and full disclosure, I don't have a STEM background, okay? I studied languages. And I've made my career in this sector. So as we move into the metaverse and beyond, some people say we need softer skills as well as the hard digital skills. I know from what Rosalia has said, she's struggling to find the trained digital experts that she needs. So we do need all of that. But do we need to look a bit more broadly to especially areas where women might be more inclined to be involved? I'm thinking of health and education. Jaya, do you have a view on the breadth of skills that you would want to see in this new industry?
So every organization, whether we are, smaller or larger, we are all facing this skill gap, right? Talent acquisition is perhaps, the most important thing. And I really liked what's happening in Indonesia, where we're talking about the sisternet, right? Where women teaching other women, and this sister entrepreneur, right? I think that's amazing. I think the same thing has to apply in the tech industry. If we can get more women involved. Now, calling it STEM, I think is, I'm a fine arts and an economics major, right? And I hold a position, I handle the product portfolio for Colt. So I'm deep into SD-WAN and SASE, and you can quiz me and I can talk to you about K-band, etc. I really understand. So I think this whole myth about, this myth, we should just, then there'll be another myth, which is about the creative mind and a rational mind. I am very rational, but I do write poetry, right? And I think we should, there is music in maths and there's music in the, so we should stop this conversation. Right? So
stop labeling.
Stop the labeling, right? And absolutely, I mean, so there is no shortage. There are too many labels. See?
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is upending the whole education system, which, I mean, yep, because it's all about labels.
Yeah. And Sheena, I'd like to take advantage, as you said, of having a lawyer in the room, one who works in the very esoteric, for me, area of intellectual property. And one thing that amazes me about the new world that we're entering is that you all have AI being the creator. Right? So it's potentially no longer just a human involved, but you'll have a machine or a computer being creative. And how do you see this? Is this starting to come out in some of the work that you're seeing or some of the questions you're getting from your clients? And how do you see this going forward?
Yeah, so I think we are sort of looking at, I mean, the era of AI-created inventions is here. It's actually been around for a long time, sort of the very basic levels of AI. And I think that, as always, the law is far behind in trying to catch up with technology. And in the area of intellectual property, if you sort of think back, or maybe I should just talk about this point, that intellectual property rights were actually developed to incentivize the development and creation and innovation. It was meant to be, it's always been a reward. So if you innovate, and the idea is, people will not innovate if they're not given this reward. And I think it's important that we sort of think, well, firstly, to think about that. Are people really innovating because they want to get protection? Like if we took IP rights away, would people stop innovating? I mean, even though I am an IP lawyer, I wonder whether that's true. And I think that we have to balance that. So we have to give, rewards and protection, but at the same time, we don't want to sort of affect the market, centralize all the rights with, say, a few tech companies. So I think that policymakers, we have to think about how do you want this to, what road do we want this to go down? Again, I say we're at the place where we can start again. We've got AI. What do we want to see the future like? Do we want AI inventions to be protected? Do we not? Do we want them to be shared so that, yes, there is a reward, but everybody gets access to them? So I think that it's time for us to think about these things, to think about shaping, maybe developing new rights. I think I was telling Vicky that many moons ago, sort of when I started my career, database rights were a thing because nobody knew how to protect them. They were not copyright, they were not patents, and so they developed a specific right. And so maybe with AI, we need to think about how we're going to give protection and give a reward for innovation, but at the same time, giving that back to people to use. And so, I think that's something, maybe a sui generis right for the protection of those type of rights, so that we all get to share and we can continue to innovate.
Can I just point out one thing regarding the AI? I had a bit of a schizophrenic moment about two weeks ago. I'm opening the paper, and there's an article from an ex-Google engineer, and he's like, it's sentient. The bot is sentient, right? And this isn't fringe news. This is pretty much mainstream news. And in the same paper, there was, the debate about the recent decision, Roe versus Wade, right? And so on both sides of the spectrum, we're contemplating and trying to understand, like, what constitutes life. And I think that, in such very disparate ways, right? So my brain is barely able to hold these two concepts contiguously. But these are the type of questions we have to ask ourselves for the network in the future. If Alexa is sentient, does she have rights? Like,
is she?
What are her
Is she?
This is why I don't have an Alexa. But what does that mean? And can you mistreat Alexa? Or Siri? So I think there's the networks of the future. I think that, if I was to hear what everybody is saying, it's not just hardware or the software. It's the legal framework, and it even can touch to the fundamental part of like what makes us human, like what makes us alive. And isn't that the fundamental question of the universe, right?
Yes.
Like, why are we here and how are we here?
Yes, and this is what is so exciting, about this James Webb Telescope, and the fact that we have been able to see the origins of humanity, of our planet. And I mentioned beforehand, I am a musician, but I'm also a technologist, and so I actually created the Symphony of Machines, and also now just recently the Symphony of the Environment. And we used AI to bring together sounds from birds and the water fountains, and then also the experiences of villagers over 80 years, etc. Actually, by putting this all together, it is not music.
Mm-hmm.
We needed to have a composer come and make music, make universal, meaningful connectivity happen, so that what the AI had brought together could then be used by a composer to be able to communicate with other people. And, this is truly what is so important. And for me, by the way, I always say that a Bach fugue is the most perfect network, because you have individual notes, which then, with object-oriented technology, combine with other individual notes, and then you go through this incredible, shall we say, transitions and journeys, and you come to the end of the fugue, and it is a perfect harmony. And I really do believe that if we can achieve that, all of us working together, we will have the network for the universe, and we will be able to use our networks when our human fellows go to Mars. I don't think so much about the aliens, but I think that we must be able to communicate with our fellow people who are going to Mars, who will be at the moon, and make certain that we will be able to communicate with them, if at all possible, in real time, which of course is the way the metaverse is going to help us do that. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, we've talked about a lot of things here today, and we've gone really, very wide, and hopefully a bit deep as well. And we talked at the beginning, was it content or connectivity? What comes first? And I think we can see that it's all, together.
Absolutely.
And there's still a lot more to be done. Even in the current environment, we heard, there's the problems, the issues, but we do have an opportunity to make a difference now, in this new world, whether it's in different modes of connectivity, different types of connectivity, and how do we use the content. We've heard again about having a safe environment. What about the regulatory environment? How do we make sure that the content is meaningful? How do we make sure the connectivity is meaningful? So look, you've been very patient, and I know it's quite near the time that we're all going ready for cocktails. But
the cool cats.
But I wanted to ask. You've been looking around the room there, and some of you are looking a bit tired, but you can't get away with not asking. I'm going to ask you a question. So, what do you think? You've heard about this new network of the universe. Has anyone got any questions for this amazing panel here?
They want a drink.
They want a drink, maybe.
Okay.
Please.
We don't have to go to the end. We can
Let me. Oh no, there's a mic there.
stop sooner.
The discussion that you're having about sharing data and how actually, if we, thank you, I can hear myself now.
God's voice has spoken.
Exactly.
From the universe.
The benefits really of actually having the data sets, maybe non-personal data sets being shared, and the data analytics that are used to do that. There's probably also a competition angle to that, because actually the digital firms have actually spent quite a lot of money and getting a lot of value from harvesting the data and providing value to their customers. Is there a risk in, well, there's obviously a balance here, but if you're sharing the data, do you reduce some of the incentives for those digital firms to invest in innovative services?
Well, I don't think so, and here's the reason why. I think it's to be applauded that there's so much to learn from the cultures within Microsoft and Google and AWS. FANGs is now a Gamma, that's the word, right? Gamma, and they have an amazing culture of innovation, and we must applaud them that they looked at the data, they looked at telemetry, and said we can do something useful with it, right? So I don't grudge them their monetization. And I don't think they grudge anyone else being, looking at the same data flows, looking at the same opportunity and coming up with new ideas. So I honestly feel that if each one of us in our individual capacity or as enterprises stop the labels, I'm a network provider, I'm a cloud provider, I'm a data center. We are really custodians of human thoughts in the form of data flows, right? It's someone thinking something, converting it from analog to digital and putting it into these digital infrastructures. So they will be more than happy. They love it. So from my personal experience, they really love innovation in all its forms.
I also do have to say that, yes, I understand that all of these companies have spent a lot of money harvesting the data, but we should not forget where the data came from and who the data owner is. And this is something, going forward that I think also with the blockchain will become much more pervasive, and that people will become even more sensitive about the data that they are giving. So yeah.
So do you want to put,
Well, I just wanted to close by each one of you giving a quick thought on what you'd like to do from here. What is your call to action? Bearing in mind all of these extremely complicated concepts, can you tie it down to one particular thing you'd like us to do, either individually or collectively?
So
start with you.
So I think all of this was fantastic, right? Letting ourselves free. But on a practical basis, what we are doing at Colt is to say that we must be ready, to have an open API system. We must be ready to integrate into any and every platform. So tomorrow, whether it's the cloud players or it's a colo, we should be. And we're very proud of that. So we are very focused on seeing that our platform, whatever we do, is open, it's API-led, it's on-demand, consumption basis. And that's the first step in this journey of saying we're going to be a ubiquitous digital infrastructure which can underpin this wonderful universe.
Thanks, Jaya. And Sheena, do you have a final comment for us?
I think for me, I would just like to see us being intentional about what we're going to do with the network of the universe, and not just, like I said, bring the same issues across. So,
Shweta?
Yeah, I think I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. I think one of the areas where Amazon Web Services as a company and as leaders, working in the company and really imbibe that culture that we have, we would love to do much more to make sure that our training programs are more accessible. We are able to provide mentoring, and we are able to actually go and reach to the grassroots levels, especially in Asia Pacific, where sometimes language is a very big barrier. So we are working really hard on making all that accessible, and actually spending as a company hundreds of millions of dollars to make free online courses available in I think now about 16 languages. Right, so that's an area, I think, making sure that we have the digital workforce to enable all this transformation that's happening, to enable all the innovation that's happening. That's a very big area of focus, and making it all inclusive, making sure we have the gender diversity, we have all kinds of diversity, not just the gender.
And Rosalia, what would you like to say as a short comment?
One, inclusion. That's my call to action. And meaningful and tangible inclusion. Look to your left, look to your right at every single one of your next meetings. Make sure that at the very least, 50% of the room is female. Obviously, I represent a lot of different diversities. I'm a Filipino, Kenyan, woman. But the good thing about including 50% of the world is you'll get all of those intersectionalities. You'll get different ethnicities, you'll get LGBTQ community, you'll have, abilities and disabilities. So I really implore that, and it's not just, it's not a superfluous call to action. It's really important because if you look at the world around us now, and you think it's problematic now, we're only going to exacerbate that problem as we export it to the rest of the universe. So I think let's start at home, let's get this problem sorted now, and let's include 50% of, or half of the sky, as they say.
Candice, would you like to wrap up?
Yes, well, I don't know if I'll wrap up, but I would like to share that my life really has been in space, and my dad did the first satellites for the United States, and I did satellite television with SES, satellite mobile with Iridium, satellite telecommunications with Teleport Europe. And today I'm doing 3 things that I think are very, very important in space. So one is that I'm the chair of Seraphim Space, which is the world's largest space tech fund. And so we invest in all of the startups that are in space. And because of the digital transformation, because of IoT, which is basically putting a sensor onto every single thing, the only way that you can get a lot of this data is by space. And so, we are working with Earth observation, we're working with the weather, and we are also working to go to the moon. These are young kids, to go to the moon, to build a new space station, to have spaceships. One of my young friends, Helen Huby, we're doing the first spaceship. Using space to bring our humanity and our technology further. The second place where I'm very working with is I'm vice chair of a company called North Star. We do space domain awareness and space situational awareness. And what we are seeing is that because of the increased use of space, it can get very crowded. And so we must put into place now, Sheena, we must put into place now, just as we did with the cars on the outer routes, we just need a space traffic management. It's not impossible. It can be done. And then the third thing that I would like to just mention, because it's kind of fun, is that, 9 years ago, the GTWN members got together with women here in the Asia Pacific, in Oceania, and they wanted to have high throughput broadband internet. And so we said, hey, let's get together and create ONSAT, Oceania Women's Network Satellite. And with that, so it was the first time, Rosalia, that many of the women had ever invested. It's the first time that they'd ever been on boards. If they couldn't invest, if they didn't have the money, some of us put the money in for them, but it's their shares. We helped create Pacific. It's unabashedly called the heart of broadband. They're bringing high throughput broadband internet to all of the Pacific Islands. They're the sponsors. And it really does show when you get together what amazing things you can do. So, yeah.
I think that's a wrap, don't you? So I think the only thing left to say is that Global Telecoms Women Network and Pacific have organised a networking cocktail. So we want to see you there. Everyone here is ready for a drink now. Please come and join us. It's at the Cool Cats Bar, and it is at the NCO. Christina, can you give us some directions on how we can get there? So we'll have some pointing directions to help you get there. Yeah. So please come along and join us there.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So thank you everyone for being such a patient. And of course, thank you. And yourself, thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.